Good afternoon, fellow professors. We are Group 47 and this is our machine learning project. These are the contents that we will be going through today. For our course project, our group decided to embark on the Kaggle competition route. We were presented with multiple competitions, but after much deliberation, we decided to choose the Northeastern Smile Lab Recognizing Faces in the Wild competition. The Smile Lab at Northeastern focuses on frontier research of applied machine learning, social media analytics, human content interaction, and high-level image and video understanding. Now, for the problem statement, family members often share facial features and characteristics. Hence, researchers at the Northeastern University want to improve their algorithm for facial image classification to bridge the gap between research and other familiar markers like DNA results. Now moving on to our Kaggle evaluation score and rank. Our best score is achieved through an ensemble of FaceNet, VGG ResNet 50, VGG CerNet 50, as well as two Siamese networks with a composition of FaceNet plus VGG ResNet 50 and FaceNet plus VGG CerNet 50. As you can see here, the ensemble submission on the Kaggle test set obtained a private score of 0.912 and public score of 0.907. A private score of 0.912 puts us in the 14th position, placing us in the top 3% among the other 523 submissions. A public score of 0.907 achieves the 19th position, bringing us to the top 4% on the leaderboard. Moving on to our dataset description. The data provided by families in the wild contains 12,379 images in the train and validation set, along with another 5,310 unlabeled images in the test set. The facial images have dimensions of 224 by 224 pixels represented with 3 channels for the RGB value. The images are sorted into directories of families represented by the format FXXX, which contains people who belong to the same family. Within each family directory, unique individuals have their own subdirectories represented by the format MIDX. Since people are only related to a small number of others, the vast majority of relationships in the dataset are skewed towards non-related. For our exploratory data analysis, we generated some summary statistics to help gain better understanding of the dataset and identify any potential anomalies as seen on the table by the left. Furthermore, we also realized that F0601 was the largest family in the dataset. When training our models, we noted that this could actually potentially cause bias, but eventually found out that it did not affect our results. Now, moving on to the challenges that our team faced. Firstly, resource-intensive algorithms. We implemented numerous high-performance models, including FaceNet and VGG Face. As these models are quite intensive in terms of memory and computational power needed, we could not train them on our local machines. The dataset being used is also large and takes up a considerable amount of memory space. Furthermore, many of these models did not support incremental learning, and so the training data needed to be processed in its entirety. As a result, we generally utilized remote servers with GPUs such as Google Colab and Kaggle notebooks to train the models. Next, hyperparameter tuning. To improve overall accuracy, several models had to be trained multiple times, using different hyperparameters during each instance. This required extensive time and access to computational resources, and remote servers such as Kaggle notebooks limit the usage of their GPUs to prevent overutilization. This was a major bottleneck to the progress of the project. Thirdly, missing and incorrect samples in the training data. The original training data contains several images which do not belong to the folder in which they were placed. These images had to be inspected and manually placed or repositioned correctly. Furthermore, the train_relationships.csv file contains individuals listed in columns P1 or P2 whose folders are actually missing in the training data. The specifics of these samples are discussed in the data pre-processing section. Lastly, imbalanced class distribution. The number of established relationships in train_relationships.csv is 3,598, while the number of potential pairs of persons is any two from a set of 12,389 individuals. This means that the dataset contains far fewer related pairs than non-related ones. Therefore, this skewed distribution may result in lowered model accuracy if not handled properly. As mentioned before, the original training dataset had some face images that do not belong in the folder they were placed in. We had to manually inspect and correct these. These were some of the following changes made to address the discrepancies. Next, we had to address the missing individuals in the original training sets. The train relationship CSV file contained individuals that were listed in columns P1 or P2 whose folders were missing. For example, for family F0039, MID1 and MID3 were related, however there was no such folder known as F0039 MID3 in the train folder, thus we ignored these and they will not be used for training. Next, image resizing. Most machine learning models require resizing and or flattening of the input images. Reasons include models having their own unique pre-processing functions such as pre-whitening and augmentation, pre-trained models with a fixed input image size, and models which utilize pre-defined baselines such as a mean and variance. For the VGG face models, we scaled the images to 224 by 224, and for the FaceNet models, the images were scaled to 160 by 160. For the VGG16 model, we scaled the images to 160 by 160 as well. Lastly, to generate a set of base classifiers, the original training images are split into multiple combinations of training and validation sets. We used the folder name starting with F09 as validation while the rest were used for training. To improve the sample diversity of our training dataset, we augmented the training set by modifying certain images. These were the modifications we made. Now moving on to our approach. Ensemble methods are among the most successful machine learning families when it comes to Kaggle competitions. Our group's plan to obtain a good leaderboard score was designed around the end goal of compiling an ensemble model. Firstly, we had to prepare the base models. A key requirement of a good ensemble model is well-performing component models. We began by training individual models from the most popular baseline models for face recognition, such as FaceNet, VGG Face, etc. This involved iterations of hyperparameter tuning until we believed we had extracted the most value and performance from the models. Secondly, training of Siamese networks. Siamese networks are commonly applied to similarity finding problems and hence suitable for our competition. From our set of individual models, we experimented on different possible pairs of models in training several Siamese networks. With this method, we added two models, FaceNet plus VGG Face CNET50 and FaceNet plus VGG Face ResNet50 Siamese networks into our final set of models. Lastly, the weighted ensemble. We compiled our set of models with a weighted voting scheme. The weights were initially assigned with proportions relative to their individual competition scores. Multiple experiments were conducted by shifting around the weights, and we eventually discovered that having a relatively even weightage across the component models provided us with the best performance. Now, let us go through the model architectures. FaceNet directly trains the output to be a compact 128-dimension embedding using a triplet loss function. This differs from other deep network face recognition approaches that utilizes a classification layer trained over known face identities and takes an intermediate bottleneck layer as a representation to generalize recognition for other data not used in training. The triplet loss function provides end-to-end learning of the whole system, where it minimizes the distance between an anchor and a positive for a face belonging to the same person and maximizes the distance between a negative for a face belonging to a different person. This will establish a margin to identify faces belonging to the same person and other individuals. Over here we can see the general architecture of FaceNet and also the triplet loss structure. Next, we have the generative adversarial networks, also known as GANs. These are algorithmic architectures that use two neural networks pitting one against the other, thus the adversarial, in order to generate new synthetic instances of data that can pass for real data. They have widespread applications, especially in image, video, and voice generation. They were introduced in 2014 by Ian Goodfellow and other researchers at the University of Montreal. One neural network, called the generator, generates new data instances, while the other, the discriminator, evaluates them for authenticity. That is, the discriminator decides whether each instance of data that it reviews belongs to the original training dataset or not. Here are the detailed steps that a GAN takes. Firstly, the generator takes in a set of numbers at random and returns an image. Next, this generated image is fed into the discriminator alongside a stream of images taken from the ground truth dataset. The discriminator then takes in both real and fake images and returns probabilities, a number between 0 and 1, with 1 representing a prediction of authenticity and 0 representing fake. In our case, real implies kin and fake implies non-kin. Over here we can see the general architecture of the GAN network and also the GAN model working on the right. Lastly, we have the VGG Face model architecture. VGG Face is a series of popular face recognition models developed by the Visual Geometry Group, VGG, at the University of Oxford. They first developed methods to create a large training dataset in order to facilitate the training of neural network face recognition systems, train their models with softmax activation, and then remove the softmax layer to create a vector representation known as a face embedding. These face embeddings are low-dimensional representations of the data, which can be used to calculate similarity metrics such as cosine distance. Since embeddings are a more meaningful representation than pixel similarity, even basic similarity metrics produce successful results. For this reason, embeddings and good representation learning have become the focus in designing deep neural network architectures. VGG Face is one of the first and simplest embeddings-based models for face recognition. As embeddings encode a more meaningful representation of the data, VGG Face performs significantly better than models based purely on similarity metrics. However, it is still a relatively simple model in comparison to state-of-the-art models. VGG16 is a convolutional neural network composed of 13 convolutional layers, 5 max pooling layers, and 3 fully connected layers. The model takes in images of dimensions 224 by 224. The number of filters in the block starts at 64 for the first block, and it doubles every block until reaching 512. The top 3 layers of the model are 2 fully connected layers and an output layer. The ResNet50 model aims to solve the problem of diminishing gradients. The model skips the connection and passes the residual to the next layer to train. With ResNet, CNN models can go deeper. We chose VGG Face ResNet50 as one of our models of choice due to its good performance in computer vision tasks. Similar to ResNet, CNET allows gradients to skip a non-linear activation function, but does that using squeeze and excitation blocks that adaptively recalibrates channel-wise feature responses by explicitly modeling interdependencies between channels. These squeeze and excitation blocks intrinsically introduce dynamics conditioned on the input, helping to boost feature discriminability. Each model first undergoes supervised training as a phase classifier first with a softmax layer and labeled data. The softmax layer is then removed to produce a vector feature representation. To produce a good representation, the model is trained with 38 layers, 8 convolutional layers and 15 rectified linear units. The VGG phase model used in this project has been pre-trained on the VGG phase dataset and has already learned the important features of a phase, allowing it to converge more rapidly. Following the analysis of previous work submitted, popular models used that perform well are the FaceNet and VGG phase models. Starting out, we performed transfer learning by using the base model weights without training, which provided an accuracy of around 0.74. Striving to improve this accuracy, we trained the models by unfreezing the last few layers, where the number of layers to be retrained were based on a small percentage of trainable parameters. The number of layers set to the trainable were the last 6 layers for FaceNet, 12 layers for VGG CZ4041 50, and 5 layers for VGG ResNet 50. For the training process, we used Adam Optimizer with binary cross entropy as the loss function, as kinship is a binary classification problem. We experimented with the parameters used for training the models such as optimizer learning rate, as well as callback functions such as early stopping and reduced learning rate on plateau. For the final parameter settings, the Adam Optimizer learning rate was set to 0.00006, and we only used reduced learning rate on plateau with factor of 0.5 and patience 20. Initially, all models were trained for 100 epochs. However, FaceNet model showed no signs of overfitting and was subsequently retrained for additional epochs, with 200 epochs having the best score, and further additional retraining showed stagnation of accuracy. As observed here, FaceNet performs the best individually compared to other models such as VGG CZ4041 50, VGG ResNet 50 and VGG 16 on the Kaggle test sets. The next step in our experiments to further improve on the accuracy took us to build a double Siamese network which utilizes 2 different models to train and predict kinship. This combination of models proved to be effective by achieving higher accuracy than any other single model. Moving on to our ensemble, we used a weighted average approach. The 5 models that we used were our FaceNet, VGG CZ4041 50, VGG ResNet 50 and our 2 Siamese models being FaceNet plus VGG CZ4041 50 and FaceNet plus VGG ResNet 50. We attempted to use VGG 16, however it did not improve on the accuracy, hence we omitted it. As with commonplace practice, we started with a weightage distribution proportional to competition score. From there, we experimented with balancing different values to achieve higher accuracy score. The best results were achieved when FaceNet was weighted at 25%, VGG CZ4041 50 at 20%, VGG ResNet 50 at 15%, FaceNet plus VGG CZ4041 50 at 30%, and FaceNet plus VGG ResNet 50 at 10%. Here are some observations that our team have made. It is observed that FaceNet does not seem to suffer from overfitting as much as VGG phase models. Even after training for 300 epochs using the FaceNet model, the validation accuracy and training accuracy only stagnates. For the VGG phase models and combinations with FaceNet, the model tends to start overfitting around the 50 epoch mark when training accuracy increases but validation accuracy decreases. Here, we can see the training and validation accuracy graph for a single Siamese combination of FaceNet plus VGG phase ResNet 50, where it shows us the training accuracy and validation accuracy when trained for 100 epoch. Although some projects did not make use of additional feature engineering, it is observed to slightly improve the performance of models and is implemented in our experiments by transforming the image embeddings. The transformation includes Euclidean distance between 2 points of 2 images, Manhattan distance but with the squares of each point, and multiplication of embedding as a form of regularization to the model. One useful form of data used to better visualize the model accuracy is a density distribution graph for the is-related score. As observed in this figure, even though the accuracy of some models are very similar, they can have very different predictions for the kinship score, which enforces why having an ensemble of different models can improve the overall accuracy. By observing the shape of each model's distribution, it is also possible to roughly gauge how the weightage affects the ensemble. It is also noted that for the weightage on the ensemble, the very last few configurations can be overfitting for the test sets, and a more robust weightage can be obtained through applying on more different tests. In conclusion, from this project, we learned that every step of the machine learning process is important and improvement to any of these components can contribute to the performance of the machine learning task. Beginning from analyzing the data and the pre-processing involved, such as correcting any empty relationships and incorrect images. This came as a surprise, as without extensive research on the compression discussion, we would have assumed the data given had no issues. Data augmentation and optimal rescaling for the models used provides better tolerance of image variations. Selection of high-performing models and optimization of parameters as well as the algorithm for training is also key in achieving the best possible score. We were eager to jump into model training and underappreciated the importance of data preparation and pre-processing. After a period of struggling with unfavorable scores, we returned to data preparation and pre-processing to properly understand our data set. It was only after we made appropriate changes to our pipeline did we begin to enjoy better performance and score from our models. Lastly, building ensemble models also challenged our intuitive sense for a good model. Our best performance did not come from a set of weights that were proportional individual model scores, but rather from weights that were relatively even between the components. This led us to discover how reducing bias within a model, that is, having more diversity of thought among the component models, can have a better impact than strong individual performance. In summary, this project provided us with considerable insight on the decision-making process in carrying out a machine learning project. We thoroughly enjoyed the process of this project and believe it gave us an enriching introduction to modern machine learning.